Okay, I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring your ass.
Hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Price Check Podcast, sports podcast brought to you by the In the Zone Network, where we go city to city, state to state, worldwide. Of course, we got to talk about NBA Game 7s here on Sunday. We also got some WNBA talk lined up for you here for the tail end of the show. But first, got to get into it, going to Madison Square Garden in New York City. An upset in Game 7 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Indiana Pacers win that game 130-109. And in what has turned out to be a very injured end to the season for the New York Knicks. Indiana Pacers team went out and just shot completely crazy numbers from the field. An NBA record 67% from the field yesterday. And just a game where they just never looked uncomfortable. They never looked as though the game was really going to be in doubt. Weren't trying to let it come down to the refs as most people probably thought that it would. And then ultimately, of course, for the Knicks, they lose Jalen Brunson in that game with a fractured left hand, which, of course, not only would have ended his time in that game, probably would have ended his season regardless, in terms of them potentially getting to the conference finals. So, Indiana team, got to tip my hat to them, man. Showed some resilience yesterday, showed some grit in the sense that the performance that they had yesterday was not anything like the performance that we saw from them in Game 5 in Madison Square Garden when things just kind of fell apart for them. We mentioned how, Tyrese Halliburton was not himself in that game. A game, of course, that led me to predict that the Knicks would not only win it, but win it in 6. And it turns out they lose it in 7. And so, obviously, the Knicks team, they'll have some questions about how things will plan out for them over the offseason. But for this Pacers team, I definitely think, they got themselves some momentum. And, not only did they learn from the Game 5 loss, I think that, going all the way back to the in-season tournament, they had to play teams like Boston, to be able to get to that in-season tournament final. It may have seemed silly at the time, may have not meant much at the time, or to outside folks may not have meant much at the time, but getting that team some exposure to some real, not necessarily playoff atmosphere, but just big game moments and big game situations, not to mention then going after that and adding a guy like Pascal Siakam, a guy who's been through some different playoff wars. It definitely helped their chances here as the season has progressed. And so very interested to see how this series with the Celtics plays out. We'll get to that here in just a second. But Indiana, man, they played with pace, got up and down the floor, got every single shot that they wanted yesterday, and now are going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2014. Now, to the Western Conference, where as big of an upset and big of a blowout as we had in the East, I don't think anybody quite expected Game 7 in the West semifinals to go the way it did between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. Timberwolves winning that game 98-90, stamping their first trip to the Western Conference Finals since 2004. Look, man, Nuggets blew a 58-38 lead in this game. And after that, of course, outscored by, 60 to 32 or 34, I'm sorry. Just crazy turn of events and how that second half ultimately played out. Of course, we mentioned they were up 20, led at halftime by 15. This was a game that we thought was kind of typical script, right? The Nuggets came out refocused after losing big in Game 6, and they're going to go ahead and put this team away doing things that the defending champs do. Wrong. Very wrong. This Minnesota team, man, they got a complete team effort here in the second half. You had guys like Mike Conley hitting big shot after big shot. He was getting big rebounds, so I think ended the game with 8 rebounds from Mike Conley. Jaden McDaniels with a huge 23-point effort last night. Karl Anthony Towns, got to tip my hat again there. Not a guy that I expected Minnesota to be able to rely on in this situation. I thought that, We've seen his movies before. These are the type of games that might be a little bit too big for him, but instead, 23 points, 12 rebounds, some huge shots down the stretch, but also some huge stops and huge defensive rebounds on that end of the floor. And Anthony Edwards, man, he didn't shoot it great yesterday, but when they needed him most, not only did he make some shots to get them back in the game, get some momentum back on their side, had some great defensive stops on Jamal Murray late in that game. I believe ended with 8 rebounds, 7 assists. So did a lot for them, even outside of just being able to score. They were sending the double his way. Whether it was coming quick, whether it was coming late, they were sending him a lot of different looks. And to Ant's credit, he was able to make the adjustments when he needed to be able to get his teammates in positions to get big baskets, or in the cases where he was able to go get the bucket himself, doing just that. And so this Minnesota team, man, I mean, I can't really say it enough. This is a team that has come together in a way that I didn't necessarily expect, no matter how big of an Anthony Edwards fan I've been throughout this season, no matter how much they've shown themselves to be just elite defensively. There was always some question about whether or not they would actually be able to put it all together in a moment like this, and ultimately got the defending champs gone fishing, as the Inside the NBA crew would say. And so, speaking of going fishing and the defending champs that are now out of the playoffs, look, and I guess less them, but more of like their fans, their media, and I guess to a little bit lesser extent Michael Malone. But a lot of trash talk coming out of Denver last year when they won a championship, and rightfully so. To the victor go the spoils, right? But there was a lot of that, you're the Lakers' daddy and all this stuff that Michael Malone was feeding into. And then we see after the game last night, my man can't handle the loss. You cussing out the reporters in the post-game press conference, not answering the direct questions about how this ultimately led to the end of your season, blowing a 20-point lead. Was all fun and games when, you guys were on top. Take a loss and now you sore losers. You can't have that. We can't have that. You just got to hold your L, man. You even saw it a little bit with Jokic as Anthony Edwards is waving bye to the fans. He's like, don't do that. No, look, again, to the victor go the spoils. This is a team, again, we just said they haven't been to the Western Conference Finals in 20-plus years. There's going to be some showing out after that. And unfortunately, the Nuggets, you just got to be able to take that. You lost on your home court, by the way. You got to be able to handle that the same way that you were able to, celebrate your championship last year. So it's all on the Nuggets because they're also joining us at home. Now, as we transition to a quick preview, quick prediction, I guess, on these conference finals matchups as we're down to the final 4 teams in the NBA playoffs, Boston and Indiana in the East. I mean, not much that we need to say on that one. Boston should be able to take care of business and get the Pacers out of there in 5 games. I do believe it'll be a pretty quick 5-game series for them. We'll probably lose one of those, brain fart type of losses that we've seen them have, not only against the Heat in the first round, but again in the second round against the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is all the makings for them to be able to make it to the NBA Finals, and I think that's going to happen, even without having Kristaps Porzingis in the lineup for some of these games. At least, I believe the first 2 we already know that he's going to miss. It's time. It's time for the Celtics. They need to be able to take care of business in this series. If they don't, this is going to open a whole new can of worms for them going into the offseason. But I do expect them to win the game 5 at home in Boston to send themselves back to the NBA Finals for the second time in 3 years. So, flip side. Now, Western Conference, you've got Minnesota and Dallas. I said it before the Denver series that whoever won Minnesota and Denver was going to represent the represent the Western Conference Finals, Western Conference in the NBA Finals. I do think that prediction will still hold true. Minnesota's going to win the series. I believe they're going to win the series in 6 games. Part of the reason, I think the size advantage for them is going to be very distinct in this series with, Gobert and Towns in the paint. Dallas was able to get away with, the whole Gafford, P.J. Washington thing with Oklahoma City just because they didn't have any real bigs. I mean, Chet is a tall man, not necessarily big man, but you've got the size advantage that Minnesota is going to have in this series, and the same way that they had multiple guys to throw at Jamal Murray on the perimeter in the series against Denver, they're going to have those same options against guys like Kyrie and Luka in this particular series. And I think, looking at those matchups, Anthony Edwards said after last night's game he's going to be, the primary defender on Kyrie Irving. You imagine Jaden McDaniels is probably going to be the primary defender on Luka Doncic. I don't know that that's going to turn out well for Dallas. Those other guys, P.J. Washington's, Derrick Jones Jr.'s, the guys who had great series in the last series against Oklahoma City, going to be asking a lot of them to be able to repeat that and help carry this team to the NBA Finals this go-round. And I think this Minnesota team, again, we said it before, might just be their time. And I think we're going to see that here in the conference finals. So predicting Minnesota to come out of the West, Boston to come out of the East, and set us up for a Kevin Garnett duel here of his two former teams in Boston and Minnesota. So looking forward to seeing how each of these series play out. Of course, Eastern Conference Finals will start tomorrow, Tuesday, May 21st. You'll have the Western Conference Finals starting Wednesday, May 22nd in Minnesota. Looking forward to seeing how everything plays out, because I think we're going to have two very fun series, even if the outcomes might be a little bit predictable. I do think these are going to be two very fun series when it's all said and done. So that'll do it for us here on the first half of the show today. We're going to have Jonah Lewis joining us here for the second half here, a member of our In the Zone Network team covering the Dallas Wings down in Dallas, also doing some college football work for us down there, but he's been writing for us on the WNBA and the Dallas Wings specifically, so I'm going to talk to him about their start to the season, as well as a couple other minor WNBA topics. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Jonah will be joining us here in just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Price Check here on In the Zone Network. We got a special guest joining us today who's been part of the network here for, I guess a few months now, close to a year, doing some great work for us here on InTheZoneNetwork.com, writing about the WNBA and specifically the team that we're going to talk about today, the Dallas Wings, none other than Mr. Jonah Lewis himself. Jonah, how we doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing pretty good this morning. Glad to finally be here.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time coming, man. We got the WNBA season underway, so now we'll get Jonah on the Price Check a little bit more frequently, checking in on the world of women's basketball, man. So good start to the season so far. We're 2 games in with the Wings. Both of those games, ironically enough, coming against the Chicago Sky. 1 win in the opener, and then, of course, losing that second game at home. I guess from what you've seen so far and just watching these first 2 games, are there any differences that you can kind of pinpoint between last year's team and the team that we've seen so far to start this season?
Well, the main difference is the lack of at the point guard position. So, they drafted 2 point guards, and I do think it's an upgrade. But since, the rookies, there's a very visible lack of leadership from the position at the moment right now, which is, I guess you could kind of expect that. I mean, they're rookies. Sevgi, she's got overseas experience, but the W is a whole different beast. So when you watch their games, you can see, Enrique's kind of having to take the lead on top of, doing her own stuff.
Yeah,
and I think that's the biggest difference between the 2 teams, the last year's team and this year's team so far.
Well, and to the point about Enrique, she's been outstanding these first 2 games, yes, scoring the ball. But as you mentioned, having that extra workload of also trying to get others involved can definitely take away a little bit from that scoring. We also saw, of course, the second game, I guess, they had a little bit more trouble, with the boards, things like that.
Yes.
Is that something that you see kind of being a problem that they're going to have, persist over the course of the season, or do you see any adjustments that can kind of instantly be made or made quickly to kind of overcome some of those problems that they've seen so far?
When it comes to the boards, I think it's more of an effort kind of thing. Because in the first game, Tierra McCowan had a double-double at the half, and she had over 10 rebounds. And then you flip to Saturday, she only finishes the game with 5 rebounds. So I think it's more of an effort thing. I don't think there's any adjustment from the coach. I think they just need to go in and to every game and go, I'm just going to out rebound whoever's across from me because Tiara, Stephanie, Kalani, they're all 6'7". There's not too many other centers out there that's going to be bigger than them, taller than them, stronger than them. So I think it's just an effort thing from them, from their perspective.
Sure, for sure. And so, I guess in the two games too, we'll kind of switch gears slightly. With what you've seen from the Sky, obviously a team that was not necessarily great last year, but getting rookie and Angel Reese, rookie and Camila Cardozo, who we haven't seen play just yet. But what have you seen from them, if anything, is different this season versus last season?
Last season, man, I think even though they're missing Kalia Cooper, I think the talent overall with this year's team will work out a lot better for them. I mean, it would be great if she was still on the team. But I like, even though Camilla, we hadn't seen her yet, I think once she gets back, their big situation is going to be a lot better. I know Isabel Harrison, she's also out. So I think the key to their team is definitely going to be their bigs, and I think that should be the game plan for mostly every outing, just to make sure their bigs are involved offensively. Because the defensively, you don't have to worry about that. They're going to do their thing in the paint. They're going to do their thing, get the rebounds, get their blocks. They're going to do all that. I think someone who I think hopefully gets used more, Kennedy Carter. I think she brings a very quick pace to their team. She makes a lot of right decisions. She makes great passes. I know she's coming off the bench now, but I think that's someone who they can really rely heavily on. And I personally would hope to see she finds her way into the starting lineup at some point. I know Marina, she's going to do her thing. That's also another key, Marina. If she stays healthy, I think they'll be good to go from the guard perspective. They'll be good to go. She's got a good grip on things for them. And Diamond DeShields is also great to have back if she stays healthy as well. That's another piece. I think the Chicago Sky will do a lot better than most people are probably predicting them. I think they can easily grab an AC into the playoffs.
Okay. Okay. So, and kind of thinking about that, we know that there's, the Las Vegas Aces, New York Liberty. You can even throw the Connecticut Sun in there just with their 2-0 start. Kind of know that those are the quote unquote teams to beat, right? But you
Yes.
mentioned the Sky having a chance to sneak in the playoffs. What, at least, again, it's very early in the season, probably a little bit too early to start thinking, playoff predictions, things like that. But if you're having to kind of give that outlook for this Dallas Wings team, what's going to be the key for them to be able to possibly spark a playoff run?
Right at the moment, it's staying healthy. We're already the most banged up team in the league, and it's only 2 games, and it's not looking good on it for them offensively, at least from my perspective. Like again, Saturday's game, they really struggled. Enrique, 35 points, Kalani 11, and everyone else was sub 10. So they've got to figure things out offensively with Natasha and Satu, and I know Jalen's coming back, but for right now, they've got to figure out offensively how to generate points besides Enrique. So yeah, the offensive game, and hopefully staying healthy. Because I don't doubt. I think a lot of people think without Satu, the Wings are going to crumble, but we've got a great team. So right, if they stay healthy, I think they can easily grab fifth or sixth seed even before Satu will be back. I think the team will be okay. Just got to everyone stay healthy.
Yeah. So, obviously, a big difference for them, as we talked about, from the difference between last year's team and this year's team. Obviously, starting the season without her is kind of one of the biggest factors. Can't necessarily gloss over that one, but
Oh yeah, absolutely not.
um, being kind of in that DFW area and kind of seeing the kind of the response and fanfare around the team. Do you kind of, again, we talked about differences between full season last year and just the start that we've seen this year, and just kind of the moment overall that women's basketball is having. Some people have talked about it, called it the Caitlin Clark effect, but even still, outside of just her, are you seeing any differences between the excitement around this season versus seasons in years past?
Oh yeah, definitely big time on social media and out in the area. I've seen more people in not just the wings, but in WNBA merchandise. Period. Where I'm going to work or I'm just hanging out. It's definitely like the presence is definitely bigger. Um, Up over at Champions Park, they have a little electric billboard that switches back and forth, and they're always advertising the upcoming Wings games. Maybe a week or two out or something like that. So the excitement is definitely there. I see a lot more advertisements. Even people at my job talk about it when that usually is not a thing. So it's like you said, the Caitlin Clark effect. That's definitely true. The Angel Reese effect. I think the rookie class in general has really helped the league out, kind of get the exposure and get themselves out there. But yeah, it's night and day from this season to last season. The game really is growing, and I'm glad to see it.
No, for sure. It's something that those ladies need for sure because they've had great player after great player after great player come in and out of the league here for years at this point. But as you mentioned, not getting that same fanfare and exposure that they may have in the past. Um, I guess now we've seen Angel Reese come into Dallas. Is there any one particular opponent or any one particular team that you're looking forward to seeing this Wings team go up against here to start the season?
A particular team. The Aces matchup at the early June. I know we're going to be shorthanded, but going up against the defending champs is always a good test for your team because we're in the same conference as them. We make the playoffs. They make the playoffs. We both get past the first round. Man, you're going to have to see them,
Right.
injuries or not. You're going to have to see them. So I think it's going to be a good test for the Wings, a good test for them as well, because you always want to see how you can go, how you play against these top teams. So I think I'm excited for that game to come about.
For sure. No, and of course, like you said, defending champs are always a good measuring stick. Whether it's, hey, are we in the championship discussion or, hey, how do we need to kind of close this gap to get there? So definitely excited for that one. I'm personally also excited to see kind of what happens with Caitlin Clark the first time that she matches up with Dallas. For weird reason, I think Enrique is going to have a good time getting up for that game. Just because I
Yeah.
think she, to be honest, is as great as we know her to be. I still think she's one of the more underrated players in the W,
Mhm.
and one who may not get the same national exposure as some of the other stars, but definitely has the game to get that here soon. So I'm excited because I think, of course, if as we've seen here through the first handful of games that have been played so far. Teams are definitely going at Caitlin. If they're not shy about it.
Yeah.
They're making it making it tough on her.
Hmm.
But I do think that's going to definitely be a game that Dallas is up for, specifically Enrique. So,
Yeah, I think we match up real well against the Fever.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's one of the teams, at least right now, even being shorthanded, you can kind of say, okay, we've got the pieces in place to be able to make that matchup work for us.
Yeah.
Whereas, of course, you mentioned the Aces. That's a tough matchup every night, let
Yeah,
alone
even
have
at
some Indians
even
on the
at full
roster.
strength, even at full strength, yeah, that Aces matchup is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, for sure.
But
So,
yeah, the Fever. Oh yeah, you go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say. So, kind of looking ahead, we kind of talked about, obviously end of the season and what to potentially expect as far as whether or not they can make a playoff push. In your opinion, what would be deemed a successful season for this Wings team?
I think a successful season, getting back to the playoffs, uh, getting back to that second round one more time. I think that would be successful. Anything short of that is kind of would be a little disappointing to me because this Wings team is one of the few who people probably don't put them in that same category as the Aces and the Liberty and the Connecticut Sun. But I think this is a team that's right on the cusp of breaking through that barrier and getting to that same level as those teams. So I think they have to at least get to the semis. And if they do get to the semis, it'll probably be that Aces team on that other side. Now, I can't say if, we'd be able to get over that hump, but I think anything short of that would probably be a bit disappointing, as this is a very up-and-coming team, because we've got a lot of pieces to get to the championship. It's just about if we could all come together.
Yeah, so looking forward to it, man. I think this is, of course, probably the most anticipated WNBA season ever, if not in quite some time. And I think, the Wings can definitely surprise some people and show up very well when it's all said and done. So, of course, before we get out of here, man, we got to, of course, give you a chance to let the people know where they can find your work, where they can find what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at The Future. I'll spell that out because I got a little bit of a different spelling. At THEFUTXERE. That's me on Twitter. That's the only real social I use. I got all the links on my profile in the Zone Network where I post my articles, more typically about the Wings, but I'm trying to cover some TCU stuff, some of the other teams in the area. On my personal account, I post about I've got an Angel Reese article. I've got some stuff covering LSU for college ball because I post a lot about college ball as well. So yeah, that's where you can find me on Twitter. That's pretty much where everything's at for me. And in the Zone, that's where you'll find most of my articles at.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for Mr. Jonah Lewis. Again, make sure you tap in. He's doing some great work for us right now in the zonenetwork.com. As you mentioned, catch his Twitter. Definitely love what I've read from you so far. Looking forward to
thank you
as part of the family, man. So that'll do it for today's episode. Of course, we'll be back talking plenty of WNBA, plenty of NBA as the season winds down for them. The season picks up for the ladies here in the W. We'll be covering it all moving forward. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Josh Price. Checking out.
Peace out.